The following program is a production of Pioneer Public Television.
Hello and welcome to Compass, a production of Pioneer Public Television. I'm Les Heen, your host for Compass. It's a weekly discussion of public policy and important issues facing our viewing area. This week, a second look at the future of higher education in our area. Last week, we discussed how education is changing at the University of Minnesota-Morris and at private colleges. This week, a look at the 2-year and 4-year schools in the Minnesota State College and University system. And one of the universities in that system is Southwest State in Marshall, Minnesota. Pioneer's Laura K. Prosser recently talked with Southwest State President Connie Gores about how her college is changing to stay competitive. Here's that report.
With comprehensive universities like Southwest Minnesota State University, SMSU, their core is liberal arts, with additional professional programs geared to specific areas. According to Connie Gores, SMSU president, they keep expanding through new programs in hope that it will increase student interest and enrollment.
We also continually look at where we are with regard to our academic programs. It's real important that we continue to stay current and have meaningful, distinctive programs for our students. So 2,500 is a wonderful size where all our faculty and our staff can work directly with our students, can get to know them as people, can help them find in themselves that magical spark, that passion, and what their interests are, match those up, help them get internships and other experiential learning opportunities, and help them find jobs or go on to graduate school. So what we've done is focus in on academic advising, focus on career placement and career advising, focus on experiential opportunities so our students get to practice outside of the classroom what they're learning inside the classroom.
There is no question to Gores that in order for all college institutions to really prosper, they will have to learn how to work together in meaningful ways through partnership and engagement.
One of the things we've done to expand our reach as an institution, we're the only bachelor's degree, or at least the first in the country, in culinology, which is really about food science and about the culinary world. We also have a very strong program with a community college in the cities, with Normandale Community College, where they take their first 2 years there and they take their last 2 years from SMSU right on the campus of Normandale. We work really closely with especially our 2-year partners to create these agreements so that students can go seamlessly from one institution to the next.
That partnership extends to the development of new fields, such as the new SMSU Ag Education degree. Institute collaboration with 2-year colleges and even high schools over curriculum like this works towards making transfers even smoother.
In our Ag Education program, one of the fascinating components of it is the fact that when we created this program, our faculty members worked with faculty members from Ridgewater College, a 2-year college, from South Central, another 2-year college, and Midwest, another 2-year college. And they put together the curriculum based on what is offered at some of those other institutions. So Ridgewater, up in Wilmer, students take classes there, and those classes transfer into us directly. Also, they offer some of the courses as part of our own curriculum. So we really have some strong collaborations there with these other institutions.
But it's not just about partnerships, expansions of programs, or transfers. It's mainly about results.
Now, at SMSU, I'm proud to say that our students do get employed when they graduate. We have between 96 and 99% of our students who are employed or in graduate school within 6 months of graduating from college. If we're going to continue to provide education for our students and provide these opportunities and help them truly change their own individual circumstance and get a bachelor's degree, get an undergraduate education, we have to support them in that effort and we have to provide it for them. That's our priority. That's why we're here. We're not without our challenges, but I think we've got the right people to meet those challenges and to make a difference.
While we talked with Terry, he informed us about a professor at the Tech College who was honored by the MnSCU board for her practices. I'm Laura K. Prosser with the story. Shannon Feen, a mathematics instructor at MnWest Community and Technical College, was recently awarded the 2016 Excellence in Teaching by the MnSCU Board of Trustees, much in part due to her stopping to take a look at how her courses could be redesigned for better student accessibility.
I was doing a lot of work online doing web conferencing, and the idea just kind of arose that, hey, why can't we use this web conferencing software to deliver a class? And so here at the college we deliver classes a lot of different ways, and this was just another way to try to deliver a class. The first class I taught, I just did it with one trial student, and her issue was her kids got off the bus right at the time that my class started, and she had a long way to travel, and she really wanted to take the class. So she was kind of my guinea pig, and she told me what was working, what wasn't working. We adapted. And then I offered it to a smaller group and then bigger and bigger, and now we offer it to any student that really wants to take class that way. So the students tell us what works and what don't work. It's funny now, I usually post a recording of my class, and if I don't have it posted within like 1 or 2 hours after class, if I forget, which I inevitably do from time to time, my students will be on there emailing me right away telling me, get the recording up there. So.
Hybrid courses vary from school to school depending on their current accessibility and how the course is run. Feen warns that it's important to ask for details when considering taking a hybrid course.
Our students get a choice. It's the same class, but they can either come to campus and take it face-to-face, like in a traditional classroom. They can log in online and watch class over the internet, and we like to joke that that's our pajama population, right? They're in their pajamas. And then the third way is we record that lecture as if they were in the classroom, and I post a link to the recording, and the student at their convenience can watch the recording. And most of my students that do that will do it at odd hours of the night after their kids go to bed and those kind of things. But some of the benefits we've seen we didn't expect, and one is that even my students that come face-to-face can rewatch that recording. So if they miss something, or they always joke and say I make it look really easy in class, but when they get home and they're actually doing the problems, they have a hard time. So they can go back and rewatch the problem. They can fast forward, they can skip ahead. And so many of our students with learning disabilities, our students with English as a second language, they can rewatch those recordings, and if they don't quite get it the first time, they can watch until they get tired of seeing me, obviously.
For MnWest, the hybrid model was quickly transferred to their online classes that were already in existence.
I took those classes and moved them back to more of the hybrid model. For example, math is a very demonstration-oriented type discipline. So, you know, a lot of my recordings are just of my hands working math problems and not on my face, which I appreciate a lot. Students probably do as well. I actually am very honest with them that even if they don't need help with the math, just learning how to use a web conferencing software will be a huge benefit to them in their working job. I mean, can you imagine your first week on the job and they want to have a meeting? You say, well, why don't we use web conferencing software? And, you know, you'll be the head of the job. So, you know, they need some of those skills. Of course, everybody needs math skills, but they need technology skills too. So if we can incorporate them in and have them learning more than one thing at a time, that's just a benefit to our students.
When you think about how perspectives of teaching has changed and how technology has adapted to assist education, these hybrid courses are just par for the course.
When I came here, I thought traditional classroom is the only way to go. And then I started teaching online classes, and I started to realize that, yeah, students can learn online, and then the hybrid is a way to merge the two. And so we have to stay on top of it. We have to incorporate it in new and unique ways as more of an attention getter. I mean, as well, their attention is, they've grown up in the technology generation. They change from one app to the other in a second, and so we have to adapt as well just to help teach them.
And with us now to discuss the efforts of two-year colleges to improve and to meet the needs of a changing workforce, we have Minnesota West Community and Technical College President Terry Goswick. Terry, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Let's start first by understanding what Minnesota West Technical and Community College is, because for people who haven't looked at higher education maps in a while, might not understand that there are a lot of campuses that you have to be responsible for.
Minnesota West Community and Technical College is a group of campuses that were independent and have since merged. It consists of 4 technical college campuses and 1 junior college campus. We have campuses in Jackson, Worthington, Pipestone, Canby, and Granite Falls, with learning centers in Marshall and in Laverne.
Yeah. So essentially, for people who might not be as familiar with Western Minnesota, it's sort of an L-shaped group of campuses down the western side of the state and a little bit in the southwestern corner. And that reflects one of the changes in higher education is, of course, we have consolidation or grouping together of administrative functions for these big campuses, right?
Yes, that's correct. We've seen that across the nation. We've seen consolidation as a way to make sure that the institutions are accessible and affordable. It creates efficiencies in the administrative structure.
Now, two-year education, of course, there's been a lot of attention paid to two-year colleges and workforce development, because it's you know, every so often it is something that needs to get a lot of attention. So, but for you, isn't workforce development a lot about partnering with K-12 and with industry to help figure out what the region needs?
Minnesota West is uniquely positioned, as are a number of the two-year colleges in the MnSCU system, to work very closely with our industry partners, our K-12 partners, responding to the realities of the communities we've been missioned to serve. And we see that particularly amongst our 4 technical institutes.
Yeah. So, you know, when you think about two-year colleges and you think about the changes for people who may have gone through a technical college, say 30 years ago.
Yes.
They went to a technical college and they came out with a certificate probably, and it was in a given field of study, and that was that. But of course what happens is now people say, well, there may be other skills that are required now that weren't required 30 years ago, so you've got an integrated sort of curriculum, right, in what they're studying?
The curriculum is ever-changing at the two-year level. We're working very closely with our industry partners. We listen to their needs and respond with the training and skill set that they're requiring. When we take a look at the opportunities in the two-year sector, what we've seen is that what traditionally was a terminal certificate, diploma, or two-year degree is now a step on a ladder to even a baccalaureate or a master's degree. So we have this continuation of degree attainment, even with our technical degrees.
So someone, in other words, may get a technical college degree and they decide 2 to 3 years later that they need additional certification, or they want to pursue another degree path, so then they may go back and get a different degree that's 2-year, or go on to a 4-year course of study over several years, right?
That's correct, yeah. We've learned that there's a number of industry partners that, as they look to work with our highly skilled individuals, they're looking for opportunities for those individuals to move on into management careers or administrative careers. What we've seen in the 4-year sector is an acknowledgement and an appreciation for the skills that the students gained in their 2-year programs. And we've seen the 4-year Bachelor of Applied Science degree come into its own over the past 20 years.
And some of this, it strikes me, is that there tended to be sort of, for a lot of people, I think, 2 very different worlds. There was a technical college education, a 2-year education where you learned a trade, you learned a craft, and then there was a 4-year education where, let's just say, you may never have picked up a wrench, you may never have picked up a tool, and they were seen as very different worlds. Are they really merging well, and is that going to continue?
I believe it will, and I think it's a reflection of the expectations placed upon the system, the system of higher education. I think what we've heard is that lifelong learners, people work many different careers and many different work for many different industry partners over their careers, and in that conversation, we've heard that lifelong learning, the continued acquisition of knowledge and skills is important. And we've seen the sector respond.
And I think, is that also a response to the idea that if you look at the number of careers that someone may have, and perhaps you have a number there, but is it 5, is it 7? How many times in the course of a career people will need to change jobs and need to be retrained, right?
The number we hear is 7.
Okay.
And we think that's probably a little bit on the low side. Coming through the Great Recession here, we saw a number of working adults change careers multiple times within the past 5 years.
And I suppose when you talk about the recession or those changes, what a lot of people may not realize is that two-year education often tends to be sort of counter-cyclical, because when the recession hits, you have a lot of people who need to go back and get retrained. So in areas of recession, you may see a lot more students than you do in a non-recession year, right?
It's one of the strengths of the two-year sector, responding to the realities of the communities that we serve. So as we see industry partners shed jobs, we see those individuals come back for retraining, and we have the ability to be nimble and to respond to those needs.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I know some people have talked about when I've asked them about their own career paths, they said, well, I was in this career track, and then I went over here, and then I went to this other institution, but wow, transfer credits were a huge headache because I lost so much. But I know the Minnesota transfer curriculum has been around for a while now. How does that really work, and is it helping people?
It is helping students, and there's room for continued improvement. It's a strong curriculum. The Chancellor's office reports 95% of the students transfer those credits very well. So it serves a large number of students and serves them very well. For the 5% that don't, we ask them to challenge the decision, and we'll work closely on that. We're seeing collaboration across state lines as well, as we look to partner with institutions directly to the west or directly to the south. We'll see those institutions also respond and are very favorable to transfer students.
One of the other things that strikes me about two-year education as I looked at schools is that for many of the people who are in those communities, they treasure the fact that there is a two-year institution in their area, partly because they view it as a much more likely path for someone who is in their community to get the education and stay. Is that still true? I mean, do a lot of the people who go to the institutions tend to stay, or where do they go after they graduate?
What we know is that the majority of our students at the 5 campuses are within a 30-mile radius of that campus. And I think it's over 85%, 87% is the number I want to say, of the graduates of Minnesota West stay, live, and work in this great state. So we know that those individuals will stay in here and contributing to our communities.
And one of the things I know about campuses too, that when you look at Minnesota, and Terry, you had experience in Iowa and South Dakota and other states, is that in Minnesota we have a lot of higher education campuses.
We do.
At one point, I know there were numbers that said if California were to add as many campuses per capita as Minnesota, California would need another 150 campuses. We have a lot of campuses, and it's fairly close. And some people say the system's overbuilt, that we have too many. But other people will sometimes say, well, no, wait a minute, this is an opportunity because everybody should be within half an hour to 45 minutes. And it sounds like a lot of you students are in that half hour to 45-minute drive from where you are.
They are, and I think I have a little data here. That is a criticism that I've heard since coming to the state. And if I may just elaborate a little bit on some of the issues facing the state. If we look at the spring 2014 graduating class of Minnesota high school students, 69 out of 100 of the high school students, on average, went on to post-secondary education. That number is down from a high of 73 about 7 years ago. Out of those 69 students, 19 of them left this state to take post-secondary opportunities in border states. That number is up. In reality, what we're seeing is only 50 out of 100 of our local Minnesota graduates are availing themselves of the campuses in this great state. So there's opportunity for these campuses to even work more closely with the students of our communities.
And it's sometimes that a matter of getting in and having those meetings with the local students to say, did you know there's this opportunity a short distance away? Because it strikes me, of course, kids will drive by a campus for years and not really understand what's going on inside.
I think there's a number of contributing factors. I was a young man at one time, and I looked to go to the big city. I elected to go to a small private liberal arts institution simply because of my background and family connections. And I think that's the key there. What we hear from our students is the choice of attending school, the choice of which career you want to start in, is affected greatly by what they learn from their parents, their loved ones, and their peers. In fact, recently we surveyed over 600 students, and 75% of them said the influence from family members and peers was greater than the influence they received from the college or from their high school in choosing to attend college and which career they chose to go into.
Do you think most parents understand that?
You know, I don't know if they do or don't. It was an eye-opening
well, that's my
statistics
point. Yeah.
for me. 75% of this decision-making process is attributed to outside influences, not to the information that's being shared by the college or high schools.
Yeah, and so it's also a little bit like family expectations. You talked about that, some of your connections, your relationships influenced your choice of where you went to school. And it strikes me that there are a lot of other people who are in the same boat because, of course, one of the biggest determinants of whether someone goes on to higher education from high school is whether someone else in the family has been there before or at least takes an active role in encouraging them.
What I had just mentioned that 69 out of 100 high school graduates chose to attend post-secondary education. When we look at that data a little bit deeper, we notice that students of color, the number drops to 60 out of 100. And if we dig into that even a little bit deeper, students that come from meager backgrounds, students that would have qualified for free and reduced lunch in high school, that number is not 60 out of 100, that number is 50 out of 100. So to help those students take that first step, it really is the relationship between that student and a loved one, a peer, to help them come to the organizations.
And then wouldn't it also be then once they get there, making sure that the sort of systems are in place, that the best practices, if you will, to get them to complete the degree?
That's one of the things I think I'm most proud of when I talk about, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Minnesota West here. But about a year ago, when I was interviewing for this position, I was struck by the spirit of service I felt from the faculty and staff at the organization, and that evidences itself in our retention rates. Minnesota West has a retention rate for full-time students that is 12 percentage points higher than our peers. Those are institutions that look exactly like us. We are 24 percentage points higher for part-time students. Our graduation rate is 17 percentage points higher than our peers, and it simply speaks to the caring, nurturing environment that our students have the opportunity to study in. And it really is the faculty and staff that make that happen.
And many of course, your institutions being in fairly small communities, it would seem that would fit into the mold of people in the community taking interest in the institution and the students. Is it largely a reflection, do you think, of the communities you're in?
I do. I think it's a large reflection of the values of Southwest Minnesota, and I think it's a reflection of who's working at the organization and why they're working at the organization. I feel called to the two-year sector, and when I visit with faculty and staff, I often hear that same response, particularly amongst the faculty, individuals that are extremely well qualified, extremely well credentialed, and they choose to work at a two-year college because they want to teach, and they're committed to student success.
Yeah. One of the other things, Terry, that I've noticed over the years about two-year colleges is some increasing specialization over the years. Let's say if you go back, compare a generation ago, where the technical colleges didn't have a community college relationship or component, and they also in many cases did not have quite as much of a specialization. But what we've seen is now there are many technical college campuses, and I know you've got some of them where that technical college campus might be the only one in the state that offers that program.
That's correct. We have some very strong programs. First of all, a recent program that we developed in Jackson is a welding program. It's world class. It's cutting edge technology, and it was only made available through a generous donation from AGCO. We'll stand that program up against any other welding program, not only in this great state, but across the Midwest. We're pretty proud of it. It's very vertical. The skill set, the technology that the faculty members use to determine the weld, the depth of the weld, the penetration, the rate, and all of those types of things is just remarkable.
Yeah, and I know that there are other, for examples, I think, at Pipestone, of course, Pipestone is known as being the only meat cutting school in the state, and there are many other examples. And is that specialization or that sort of, tracking, is that in part due to the fact that what happens in the technical college system across the state is that there may only be a certain number of students, and so what you want is to sort of direct some of those students into those programs and get the best quality you can in those programs. Is that how it works?
It is. And I think what you also see is that those programs create a specialization based on the local industry needs and in response to local industry needs. And it takes on a personality of its own that really provides opportunity for the students of that program when they graduate.
When you think about higher education, I know you said you had studied you've worked in South Dakota and in Iowa and Nebraska, and your own background, I know you said was in mathematics. Tell us how Minnesota and South Dakota and Iowa compare either with each other or with the rest of the country in technical education.
I think there's some differences in governance structure. When we take a look at the South Dakota model, the technical institutes are extensions of the K through 12 system. They don't report to a separate board, and they don't have a separate governance structure. They are the fiscal agent really is the K through 12 system. In Iowa, the community and technical colleges, much like Minnesota, have merged. And we see that the variety of programs represent the students within that are seeking to transfer or go into a career technical field. But the governance structure is quite a bit different. It's a local board, elected officials, who to some extent have some taxing authority. Iowa is kind of a mix between the Minnesota and Nebraska models. The Nebraska model is very much a locally controlled board with significant authority and autonomy in regards to what the college does. They have also merged the technical institutes and the two-year colleges into a community college setting. We do not see a community college structure within South Dakota. I think we're going to see some interesting developments here in November as the state wrestles with, I believe it's Amendment R, where the governance structure of the technical institutes is being brought forward to the voters for consideration of, is this serving the state well?
So very different states, very different models. Where do we go from here if you have a student who, let's say, is interested in two-year education? It seems like a lot to sort out. Where do they start?
I think one of the other things that we're seeing in higher education is parents and students are becoming more critical of the institution that they choose to attend. They want to lean heavily on data. How successful are the students when they attend those institutions? How successful are they? Do they get jobs? What level of debt do they carry when they exit the institution? They're becoming much more critical consumers of the opportunities presented because they do have a wide array of opportunities. As I work with students, and I encourage them to look for the fit. What feels like home? What feels like the institution that you'll be successful in? Where do you make the connections with the faculty and staff? Where do you believe you'll be successful? That could be a 2-year institution, a 4-year institution.
Sure. Good advice to end on. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Terry Galswick, president of Minnesota West Community and Technical College. Thanks for joining us on Compass. And that's it for this week. Join us next week as we take a look at how one watershed and a pilot project working together to improve water quality in the region.